Hey there, I'm Julie, and this is the Married to Addiction podcast. If you're here, then you're probably what I call my secret sister. We're in a situation we never asked to be in and fighting a battle we never wanted to fight. We're faith-filled women who are married to an alcoholic, and it affects every inch of our lives. If that sounds like you, then this is a safe place for you to land. Married to Addiction is a faith-based podcast where I help you find the tools and strength you need to navigate your husband's addiction without losing yourself in the process. So please subscribe and tune in as often as you can, because your husband's recovery is important, but so is yours. The Married to Addiction podcast is brought to you by the Secret Sister Circle. The Secret Sister Circle private group coaching program was designed to take the Christian wife of an alcoholic from hurting to healing. If your life feels unmanageable because of your husband's drinking, if you feel consumed by his addiction and you're constantly trying to figure out how to stop it, if you have let everything else in your life fall by the wayside, including yourself, then the SSC was created for you. I actually built the SSC around what I needed back when my husband was deep in addiction. I clearly remember sitting on the floor of my closet one day, just bawling and frantically searching Google for help. I couldn't really find what I needed, which was help, detailed help, step-by-step help, designed for a Christian wife, because it was also super important to me to have that element built in because of my faith. And I wanted to be guided by that, from that angle. So if that sounds like you, we would love to have you join us in the Secret Sister Circle. You can get the help you need without feeling exposed. It's a private online program with a private online community of other wives just like you. And you are taken step by step through every possible scenario that you could encounter as the wife of an alcoholic. We would love to have you join us. You can get started beginning today and start moving towards healing. Just go to www.marriedtoaddiction.com and look for the tab that says Secret Sister Circle. We'd love to have you join us. Hello, and welcome in to episode 102 of the Married to Addiction podcast. Today's episode is called Financial Infidelity, and I'm really excited today to be joined by a guest named Tanya Gioia. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so happy you're here with me.
Thank you, Julie. It has been a real pleasure getting to know you, and our stories are so similar.
I know, it's been crazy. So we've actually been talking pretty regularly here lately, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that as we get into the episode a little further. But Tanya is a family recovery coach and host of the Sober on Purpose podcast, and she has some very similar experiences to a lot of us here. And we do want to talk about a super important topic that affects a lot of wives of alcoholics, which is, as I said, financial infidelity. But first, Tanya, I want to just begin with you telling our listeners a little bit more about your background as it relates to addiction recovery.
Absolutely. So I am sitting here holding a 20-year chip. And when all of this started, I thought, okay, 12 steps, 12 months, 2003, this is June, we're getting married in September, boom, 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 we'll be done. And for anybody who's been in the program or in any program, you know that I was putting on my pink glasses and living on the pink cloud. What I didn't know about addiction could just fill a room. And as I wandered into that, I realized that I had chosen someone for my very own addictive personality preferences, and it wasn't just about him. It was about me and the relationship, and especially my relationship with God. And so that set off years of trying to figure this out, getting a sponsor, becoming an international federation coach, making sure that I was a craft instructor and invitation to change instructor, that I wrote about it on a blog, that I now do a podcast about it, about purpose, about sobriety, emotional sobriety. It has become a life's work, not to put anybody down, but to say, hey, there's hope and there's possibilities, and you are not powerless. I think that's one of my biggest things is, yes, you cannot change somebody else, but you can change yourself in such a way that God recognizes you again, that you're in conjunction with him, that you are happy in plenty and in want. It's amazing how God can cause these transformations to happen, and sometimes painful.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and we both have been through that, and I know we've both talked about the fact that we did a lot of things the wrong way, which is kind of
Absolutely.
also why we're here, because we kind of have a what not to do manual to share with people as well.
That's
So
what we should write,
that's
Julie. We should write a what not to do manual
yeah, yeah. I think
with
it would
pictures.
probably be about 2,000 pages. Because
Oh boy.
so many of the things that, a lot of us do, we both did when we were very, very early on with this and trying to figure out how to manage it and fix it and all of that stuff. So I know that we have some very relatable stories there, definitely. So we did want to focus in, though, today about financial infidelity. So I kind of wanted to start off. Can you just explain to the listeners what exactly financial infidelity is?
So in a marital relationship, and not all function the same way. My parents had two separate checkbooks and then a joint checking account or a joint savings account. Infidelity is when I have created a lie or a half truth or an omission to keep you from figuring out what I am doing outside of a covenant relationship. So just like sexual infidelity, financial infidelity is the same thing. We often overlook it. My mother's statement was, he makes most of the money, so he should get to make most of the decisions. I don't buy into that, because when we're doing a family, we're co-joint. We're joint heirs in Christ. We're joint heirs in raising this family. There may be some things that the husband needs to take leadership on. I am perfectly fine with that, but there needs to be discussion and wisdom. So financial infidelity in the strictest sense would be, I'm telling you that I'm putting my whole paycheck in the bank, but really what I'm doing is I'm having my company siphon off some and put it in a private savings account just for me that you don't have access to and we haven't agreed upon.
And is that how it usually shows up and how it usually looks in relationships? Is just all of the earnings are not being disclosed, or are there other ways that it can look too?
It can look in many, many different ways. In my own circumstances, one of the things that came home to me was, so and so is having a lot of trouble right now. We need to support him as good Christians. We need to do that. Let's write him $100 check. Now, the $100 check was not going to that person, or even if it was written to that person, it was coming back. It was being used to purchase substances and coming back to my husband. And I'm not clean either. When I knew this was happening, there were accounts that I had that I started moving money around in. And a lot of people would say to protect yourself, and we can talk about that later, but I'm not clean and straight up either with that, as far as I was taking Christmas money or I was taking this kind of money and tucking this away, kind of that rainy day fund. So the big book says those who are unable to be honest with themselves are the ones that are not able to make it out. And that's where not only am I being dishonest with myself and my trust with my spouse, I'm being dishonest in what I want and what the marriage should look like under Christ. Because what does he say? Not to defile the marriage bed. That's in all things, emotionally, sexually, financially, raising the kids. All those things go with that. So financial infidelity will have a huge impact because both of you are living secret lives.
Mm, that's a great point. Yeah, it is. It is another secret life and another area of your life together for sure. So, what do we do if something like this is happening in our life right now? And then a second part of that, what are some ways that you can protect yourself if it hasn't happened in your situation, but you're worried that it might?
So there is, this is such a hard situation to come into. The key thing is to have the conversation. And to have the conversation, say what you mean what you say, but don't say it mean. So there needs to be a conversation around expectations. So often we hop into marriage and we think, well, everything is shared and everything's co-joint and this is just how it should be. But remember, we come from two different families. We come from two different countries, basically. And one of us has an exchange rate that works like this, and the other has an exchange rate that works like that. If you don't have a discussion, you don't know. So, is it possible to begin to sit down and say, where are the finances? What do they look like? And get real numbers on a piece of paper and then do a budget? Where we finally came to is we hired a Dave Ramsey consultant to help us with this because we couldn't do it on our own. Now, financial infidelity can mean a lot of secrecy, and so you still may not know. What I did was to turn it over to God. Say, God, I'm doing the best I can to know what's out there, to manage our family resources. I believe He is too. What are we not seeing, and what maybe do we not need to see? Now, this was after sobriety. We had to have sobriety first, and I think most people would tell you that. As long as sobriety is not there, that financial infidelity is going to continue because the need for whatever substance, video games, whatever's going on will out-trump everything else. So you have to deal with one thing first and then go to the next level.
And so, if we're still in a situation where our husband is addicted, what can we do in the way of like boundaries, like financial boundaries, to keep him from using money inappropriately in that way?
Julie, I love your question because that's something that in the Lisa Turkhurst Bible study, Good Boundaries and Goodbyes, we're doing on the Joyous Family platform right now. You cannot boundary people into responsibility. And that is really hard. So if you can't boundary people into responsibility and he decides not to bring his paycheck home or you decide not to put the full amount in there, there's really not a lot you can do in that circumstance.
Yeah. And of course, we both talk about the fact that boundaries aren't to control somebody else anyway. So trying to control, what he's doing is going to be an exercise in futility. So if that's the case, then getting back to what I had mentioned before, what are some ways that we can protect ourselves financially if this is happening?
Absolutely. And that's where I had to really have some wise counsel and to go to God and to say, what do I need to do here? Now, when my husband was still in high addiction, he asked me to remove my name from the joint account. And we had, to the best of our ability, a sober conversation. I said, well, if I'm going to do that, I was part-time, he was full-time. What are you going to take care of? And then I'm going to put the money from my part-time job in my own account. We were able to come to that agreement. To me, that is, I'm being honest with him on where that money is going. He's saying what he's going to pay for. At that point, you also have to be aware of what your needs are and how God is going to provide for you. So at some of the scariest times in my life, it was a heck of a lot of prayer. So I had done what I could do in the natural and been straightforward about it, and then sought out good community and good women to surround myself with who opened their doors as far as there was dinner. Sometimes there was provision as far as clothes for the kids. Amazing things began to happen when I said, okay, my husband should be my provider in some senses, but my ultimate provider is God. That's where I think we get in a scramble, because if I waste my energy, the energy that I could be doing my part-time job, taking care of the kids, doing what I need to do, if I waste it trying to get him to give me what he has chosen he's not going to give me, then I'm wasting energy I could be doing something productive with. So there's a couple different ways you can go about that, especially if you are working, is to say, hey, I don't feel like we're being super responsible with our funds. How can we decide who pays what and what's going to happen? In the extreme, this is such a hard story to tell. When we did separate, I had to basically divorce the house. I had to say, I cannot care about what happens to the house because I can't afford it. So I had to go live in a different place. He was living in a different place. We eventually rented the house out, and God is so gracious. We got to sell it 10 years later, but I had to let go of that. So controlling the controllables is the one thing. What can you do? What resources can you reach out for? That was a hard decision to make, to say, okay, I don't have health care, so I am going to go to the Medicaid office, say, this is where I am. I need health care. There are a ton of resources out there. But here's the key is there's a lot of shame and guilt that comes around this. Mm-hmm. And you and God can get together and say, who do I need to reach out to? Who do I need to be supported by? Where are the resources I can go after? The last thing you want to do is not accept help when it's readily available for you to accept.
Yes, and I love thinking about it in that way because we always, at least for me, I know I struggled with this, thinking that there is a finite amount of financial provision and I need to figure out how to make that last for bills and for, you know, the money that he's taking to drink and not being able to come up with his part of stuff. And how can I make that happen? Because there's just not enough. Thinking about it like that will drive you crazy because you're trying to manage something that can't be managed because there's just not enough at the end of the day. So looking at it as another opportunity to release control and have the faith that God is going to swoop in and fill those gaps when needed is huge. And being able to focus your efforts there instead of trying to micromanage every single thing that he's spending, which is ultimately, like we said, exercise in futility because you're trying to control another person, putting your energy into looking for those resources and having, you know, an eye out for things that God might be trying to bring to you and basically drop in your lap if you'll just knock on the right doors. That's huge. And that feels so much easier, at least it seems like it would for me, than trying to manage the actual money that is flowing into the house and thinking that that's it. And when that's gone, there is no more provision anywhere.
That was the key shift for me. So I did keep a budget. I did plan. I did keep things in organized. And most of the time, he held up a significant portion of his part of it, even when the use was really high. He did not, when I was nagging him and all over him and demanding to know where all the money was and where everything went, I could pretty much guarantee more was going to come off the table. And the more I went after it, the more problematic it became. So a very wise young man, he was a very young man at the time, was talking about that one of his friends, the wife of one of his friends, would throw away the cigarettes. And one day she thought to herself, I'm just costing myself money by throwing away the cigarettes. So pouring the alcohol, throwing the dime bag away, throwing all that stuff away, you're really just costing yourself money and you're not solving the problem. The problem is so much deeper than that. I'm not saying you don't need to set boundaries, and if they're willing to not smoke in the house or not drink in the house or those types of things, and maybe it is time to say, I may have to go spend a couple days with mom, or I may have to go do this. Where you draw your boundaries is something that only you can work out, and it is for your protection and your provision. So the money is very similar to that in that you're not going to be able to control how much he uses, what he uses, when he uses of any substance. Neither are you going to be able to do that with the money. And I tried. Between getting really angry, shooting guns off in the backyard, taking money out of the accounts, doing all those things, all I did was damage my integrity and pull myself further away from God.
And I love the point that you're costing yourself more money, because you are. Oh my gosh, how much money did I pour down the drain?
Yes.
A lot.
I mean, because they're just going to go get it again.
Oh, so, yeah. It wasn't like, oh, well, I guess I don't have anything to drink, so I just won't drink tonight. It never worked out like that, ever. It was like, now I have to go to the store and, you know, drive inebriated and whatever else, you know. So that definitely didn't help me ever.
So that's one of the things that we talk about is access versus responsibility. And if you have someone, for a while I managed all the accounts and paid all the bills. And that was my responsibility, and I feel like I did a good job. When he decided that he could not handle that anymore and that I needed to step out of it, that's when we split accounts. That's when we split, who paid what and those types of things, because I didn't feel like he had the responsibility to have the access to all of the money. And God and I counseled about that, and I counseled about that with some God-fearing people to figure out what the next step was. And then I really began to look for resources and things that could support us in this meantime, because I wasn't giving up on the marriage.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of the place where you have to consider if that person, in a lot of situations, I'm sure, and I know that I got this pushback in my own situation, when you start to say things like, well, the money isn't being used appropriately or whatever, it's just a giant fight and they're not on board with trying to, split things in a different way or manage things in a different way. So that's when you're kind of out of options, except for being able to do what you can do on your side to look for other resources. So I'm, again, super glad that you brought that up, because I think that that's something that people don't really consider. They just think, well, the money is what it is. And if he's spending it all, then there's no option for me. And that's just not true.
It's absolutely not true. And especially since we live in the most powerful country in the world at present, there are tons of resources out there. What you have to do is swallow your pride and go looking for them. Because I was not willing to go back to work full time. My kids were really little at the time. Not willing to go back to work full time. Not willing to give up on being the home front parent, the main caregiver. I had kids late in life, and so I wanted to be there for them. Wanted to be part of them. I did have to shift some, but I didn't have to shift completely. And then I had to be real aware of, okay, what can we do for free? And when kiddos are 3 and 5, the playground is just as much fun as anything else. What other events are going on in town? The Halloween parade was just an enormous joy. And then the YMCA was open for free on like a Saturday night. The church was there. How do you get real creative and get connected to your community? It's amazing when you step in and do that, and God finds these solutions for you. So I'm not saying it wasn't hard. I'm not saying it didn't hurt. I'm not saying it isn't something that you need to deal with. What I'm saying is it is just a symptom of the bigger issue, which is just a symptom of the even bigger issue. Julie, you and I were talking about this, how much pain your person is in, that they are using substance, videos, pornography, whatever, to deal with that pain.
Right. 100%. And I think too that it's when you start really connecting in those ways in the community, just because you're looking for things to do or resources or whatever that also is a really great way for you to, swoop your kids up and get them out of the house if there's, overt drunkenness that you don't want them to be paying attention to that evening or to be exposed to that evening, so that's good too. To use for that. But another thing that struck me is if you are having these types of issues and maybe you're thinking to yourself, well, we're having trouble, paying the cable bill or the whatever bill because he's using the money, but you're not thinking along the lines of, well, we don't have enough food to eat. If you are in financial dire straits to where, obviously cable is something that's not a necessity, but say it's your mortgage. Say you're coming up, short on your mortgage or your rent, you're being threatened with eviction or whatever it is. If you do need to find resources where you can get food so that you don't have to spend the money on the food and can then put that money, towards your rent or towards your housing, then that's another way that you can, source out some opportunities for supplementing if he is using money for other things and you're coming up short on the bills.
Absolutely. And I think one of the key messages is realizing that you are in deeper than you thought. That it is, for me, it was a realization that it was time I spent a lot of time not letting people know that things were happening, that things were getting worse. All addiction goes into degeneration. No matter what it is, it all slides downhill. I had to bring people in, and I had to bring Christian discerning people in. I had to bring my pastor in. I had to bring some women in. I had to bring some other people in. And by that, I mean, I had to admit that we had a problem. And that was probably the biggest key indicator, was that the financial infidelity was getting worse and worse and worse. And as it got worse, I had to keep reaching out for more and more help, which actually brought us out of the situation. As long as I kept it behind closed doors, I can handle it. I can control it. I'll make it work. I'll make our bread. We had chickens at the time. We had eggs. We'll make do. This will happen. But it was when the mortgage began to slip. It was when, we couldn't pay the insurance bill for the cars. That's when I really had to say, hey, I can't ignore this anymore. So who's speaking to me there? God's saying, hey, you've got to wake up and see that you can't continue like this.
Yeah. And I did the same thing, just like, shutting everybody out. And for me, it was more like, well, I don't really want I don't really need the emotional support, is what I thought at first, which now is just laughable to me because I fell apart because I didn't have emotional support.
Yes,
but of course, I didn't see that happening, right? I didn't see that happening until it was, already way far progressed to where I was basically a shell of myself. But, we think, well, I just don't want to let anybody in emotionally, or I'm feeling a lot of guilt or shame around it. Well, if you start, like for me, and I had told you this before, my whole situation got exposed because my husband tried to take his life. And at that point, he was missing for almost 48 hours. And I was calling everybody in a panic, like, oh my gosh, like, help, what do we do? Like, I was just absolutely terrified. And so I feel like they're always going to be brought in at some point.
Yes.
Because as you said, it's progressive and something's going to happen. Don't let it be losing your house.
Yes.
If there are people in your life who could potentially help you with that, yes, it's something that you kind of have to swallow your pride, but there are people who are willing to support you that you may be shutting out just because you don't want the opinions, or you don't want, the shame around it to be exposed, or whatever that is. But God might have those people just waiting in the wings, more than happy to help you. So you do have to kind of get over some of that if you are in a dire situation. And I think all of us find ourselves in some sort of dire situation when we are married to an addict.
Absolutely. And the financial, so here's the hard part of sobriety with substance or video or pornography or whatever you're talking about doesn't necessarily mean sobriety with finances. If there's been a secret life before and they've been dealing with it's the onion layer. Once they undo one onion layer, then you might need to undo another onion layer. We had really, really bad habits. Both of us had really, really bad habits. Hence, we brought in a Dave Ramsey financial consultant. We never lived in that house again, but we did end up selling it. And we were able to really build a budget from there, which, if you're the primary caregiver, if you're the person at home, there is a lot of safety in knowing that the money goes here and then it goes over there, and then I have enough money to pay the kids' school fees or buy shoes or put snow tires on or whatever that is. With that budget, we had in the beginning, we were accountable to each other and accountable to this third party that we hired. Then we learned how to be accountable to each other, and then we learned how to feel safe. That's an amazing context after coming through such a rough patch. Because what is God doesn't say money is evil. He says the love of money is evil, because he's there to provide for us. Everything we could ever need, everything we could ever ask for, he's there to provide for us. But we have to trust him with it. Right? We have to trust that it's going to be there. And so it took a lot of growing. We didn't just come out of this and go, okay, we can manage money together and we can do that. It took a lot of growing to be able to do that. And that was probably 3, 4, 5 years down the road. So it's not like snap, the financial infidelity stops. I've heard some stories where it is, but it takes a little bit. Money is pretty, again, you're coming from two different countries, speaking two different languages about money, and it's a little difficult. So the encouragement I would have is learn all you can about budgeting and money. I think the Dave Ramsey system is a good system to start with. Learn, it's pretty simple. Learn a lot about that. Not so you can preach it to other people, but so that you understand it. I'm in a stage in my life where I need to start thinking about the long term. And I thought, you know what? I haven't really been thinking about this. I need to call some financial people and figure out what that would look like, and take back charge of my adult life as far as this is concerned. And, that's on me. That's on me that I haven't been paying attention to that. And what often happens with affairs is one person in the relationship will have an affair, the other one will have a counter affair, and then it can keep going like that. It happens the same way with money. Well, you're going to go out and buy, a fancy motorcycle. Just watch this vacation that I've paid for me and my girlfriends. If you can find that in scripture, let me know, because that is not the way it works. Money doesn't work that way. In fact, money works in such a different way. It's more like love. The more you give away, the more you're able to keep for yourself. I mean, that's the upside down kingdom economy that God has set up. And Jesus talked a lot about money. So if you really want to understand money and how money works, get in the scriptures, get with people who are talking about money, understand it, because it is a tool. It is not the end all and be all, but we make it the end all and be all because if he would just, if I had done differently, if we hadn't done this, that's all water under the bridge. Get with God and figure out what he's saying and look at yourself, and are you being financially responsible?
It's true. It's just another example of us needing to check ourselves instead of worrying so much about what the other person's doing. And the freedom that comes with that, just like with any other area when we're the wife of an alcoholic, the freedom that comes in letting go, we're always so afraid to do that because somehow we feel like it's going to feel harder, I guess. And when you finally get to the point where you're like, okay, hands off the wheel. Like I had shared with you, I didn't get to that point until I was out of ideas.
Yeah,
I just was like, I don't know what else to do, and at that point I was just in a shambles. And so it's really something that I try to teach a lot on is don't wait until you're at that point, like release and experience that peace way beforehand, because there is just so much relief in that. You're already going through such a hard thing. Trying to hold on so tight to all these different parts of our lives, money included, just makes the stress ball grow and grow and grow. It's not helpful in the least.
It's not. And let me tell you the miracles that happen. So I couldn't afford the house we were in. He couldn't either. And I put out to, I was working as an esthetician in a spa, so I knew everybody in town. I put out to everybody. Somebody came up with a house for me that was 5 blocks from where I worked, right down from where the kids were, $500 less than what our mortgage would have been, and had enough space for everybody, a backyard for the dogs. Everything was, it fell into place. Miracle number 1. Next one was that I was able to work around, and remember, my work should have been weekends and evenings. I was able to work around the kids' schedules and be there for them when they got home. And also, so I was making enough. I look back on it, and God's economy is funny with money. I was not making enough money to pay all the bills, but all the bills got paid every month. And then somebody at the Christian preschool we were going to said, hey, with your income level, you should qualify for this, this, and this. Can we pay for your preschool bill? And everybody knows how expensive preschool is. Can we pay for your preschool bill? Yes. Wow. And when we live in an area where there's a lot of wild game, people started opening their freezers to me. I didn't even ask. They're like, would you like some elk steaks? Would you like some antelope? Would you like this? Would you like that? I didn't ask for any of it. And they started opening all of that to me. And then on top of all of that, my business began to flourish. And I'm like, okay, God, I don't completely understand this, but this is working because, this is so funny, because I'm being faithful and because I am turning to you. Now, when husband and wife separate with a lot of these things that are going on, often they turn to other humans, right? And I had girlfriends and I had a church and I had all that, but God put a hedge around me. I was not looking for some man to provide. I wasn't, trying to get money from other people or those types of things. He stepped in and just provided everything I needed. It was absolutely miraculous, to the point, this is my favorite story. The church paid for me to go with the women's group to the Women of Faith down in Denver. We're about 4 hours from Denver. And they're handing out the cards for World Vision of the little kids that need to be supported and can you help? All these types of things. I'm like, God, man, you of all people know that I don't have the money to do this. He's like, go up to the table. I'm like, I go up to the table. And there's a nice woman there, and I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at all these kiddos, and my kiddo is 4, and I'm thinking, oh, God, really? Do you really want me to pick up this $35 monthly expense? Do you really want me to pick that up? He's like, yes, pick out a child. So I pick out this little boy from South Africa whose face is all screwed up, like somebody's made him be in this picture. He doesn't want to be in this picture. Shirt is half buttoned sideways. He's got the shorts on, and he's like, I don't want to be here. Pick this little boy up, and I know he's the right one because he's born the same year as my boy. He's 4 years old. And what God said to me, and I'll never forget it, he said, I will provide for this child. You will not be providing for this child, but the reason I'm having you do this is because I want you to know I will always provide for you. I will always provide for you, even when you feel like you don't have enough to give. I've been providing for a World Vision child for the last 15 years.
I love it. And that started with release and faith.
Absolutely. It was complete surrender. It was, God, I don't know where the food is coming on the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's how he works. Like you said, that's God's economy.
It is. So just to swing it back to financial infidelity, just like with whatever addiction is going on, if you keep pounding on it coming forward from your own strength, I can pretty much guarantee that you will either end up without a relationship or the financial infidelity will expand.
Right. So basically, the way to start shifting things is release, for sure. We talked about that. Have a conversation if you can, if you think that that is something that would be met with some sort of cooperation. I mean, I knew in my situation that there was no way to have that conversation because, first of all, he was almost never sober towards the end there. Mm-hmm. But I do think that in some cases, like you said, you guys were able to have a conversation and rearrange some things. So I think that is possible. But if it's not, definitely, work on some boundaries as much as you can within the confines of, whatever your financial situation looks like. And then also start looking for those opportunities. I think that is a really great point that a lot of us miss because we're so worried about trying to fix it all ourselves.
Well, and give others the opportunity, the grace and the opportunity to bless you. There are other people waiting out there to bless you because you're going to be able to bless other people later. Mm-hmm. Right? Give them the opportunity to bless you. And if you don't let people in, the people who are designed to be Jesus with skin on for you can't help you.
That's it. Yep, 100%. And I know that I had done that in my own situation because when everybody did figure out what was going on because it got to horrible level, they were like, why didn't you let us know? Mm-hmm. Like we would have helped you with this and that and this. And then I felt dumb because, at that point everything was so bad. It's like, well, yeah, I probably should have said something way before now, but We only know what we know at the time unless we get some insight like this. So I'm really glad that you're sharing your experience and helping us know and helping the listeners know like what they can start doing now to be proactive and also to try to right the ship if it's already kind of, going off the rails.
Can I leave you with a scripture?
Yes, please.
Okay. So this is in Isaiah 4:11. This is when my mom gave to me when I finally said, I need help. She said, he will tend his flock like a shepherd. He will gather the lambs in his arms. He will carry them in his bosom and gently lead those that are with young. And this was particularly important to me at the time because I have degrees. I could have gone out and gotten a full-time, high-powered job. In a sense, we lived in a really different area. But I wanted to be there for my young. And God makes a promise that he is gathering you into his arms, that he's taking care of you, that he's looking after you. And I believe he does this for everybody, but especially those with young kids, that he's there. This is part of his family. He is husbanding you when your husband can't be there.
I love that. That's such a great reminder because we feel so out there and all alone sometimes. And the loneliness is real, right? When you're in this situation, but
Absolutely.
being reminded that God is still there for you to fill in those gaps. And if you'll just be open to that and lean into that, it can really be a game changer.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's pivot a little bit. I want to talk about a couple of opportunities that both you and I have coming up during the remainder of this month. So time of recording is October 2024. Both of these things just happen to be going on at the same time, or not the same time, one right after the other in the same month. So I think that this is going to be a really awesome opportunity for everybody to just really get tons and tons of help for the remainder of this month. So first, I wanted to make sure that you all know, if you haven't already seen it on social or in your email, that I'm running another live round of my Get Off the Addiction roller coaster event. It's happening next week from October 14th to the 17th. It's basically a week of free coaching. I know that some of you have probably gone through this on your own. I do have it available, or I have had it available as kind of a self-led type of thing too. But going through it as a live round is a whole nother experience because you'll have community in the way of a private group. There'll be a private audio feed that you can have access to. I'm giving away some great prizes. And it can help you build some real momentum because you're going to be going through this experience with a lot of other women who are going through a lot of the same things that you are. So please go make sure that you register. It's free. Register for that at marriedtoaddiction.com/roller coaster-event. Also, so that's the 14th through the 17th, so next week. Then is it the week right after that, or maybe 2 weeks after that?
It's the week right after that. And we're calling this Sober October, emotionally sober
yes.
October.
That's right. Yes. That is very important. Because
and join this challenge, because this is really something where you are going to get some hands-on, hands in the dirt, rebuilding your life opportunity. And you don't get that very often for what Julie is doing. And that community piece, that's what we've been talking about with this financial infidelity, is these are things that we want to hide away, tuck in our closet, pretend are not happening. In this community, she's building a safe community for you to share what's going on, for you to get some ideas, and then you get to choose to act on it or not. Nobody's going to come into your house and say, you must do this. You're going to get to get off the now, personally, Julie, I love roller coasters, but I wouldn't want to be on one all the time. So I would go, woo, and then say it's time to get off and go fix some fried chicken or something, right?
Exactly. And when you're doing it like week after week, month after month, it gets really old. Really
It does. Absolutely.
So yeah, I would love to have y'all join me for that, definitely. But I'm also super, super happy to be a part of something that you have coming up at the end of this month, also a free event. Will you please tell the listeners more about that?
Yeah, so we are running the Blessed Family Recovery Summit for the second time. Where is God in the chaos of addiction? Julie is one of the speakers. You're going to get more in depth in her story. Hopefully I've asked her some special questions you haven't heard before. It is just a wonderful, hopeful experience. That's what we want to bring to you. Hope, tools, thought processes, opportunities. And all of these 16 speakers have put together some things to make your life shift. So this is a transformational opportunity that you can do in the privacy of your own home for free, October 24th, 25th, and 26th. And then take away from it the things that you particularly want to work on. And here's one of the keys. You are not powerless. You are always contributing negatively or positively to your situation. So just like we were talking about today, if I was to come in and just keep nagging my husband about money and just keep that anger level up, what are my boys hearing? What is he hearing? What is God looking at? This really ugly bleh. We want to give you the opportunity to see that hope deferred makes the heart sick. We all know that. But it is also the tree of life when you can put hope back in there. And God gives us the opportunity to hope. And not because we hope on things that are unseen, but it is because we hope on things that are unseen, not things that are seen. And that's what we are bringing to you with this summit is how do you put hope back in this chaos? How do you take active steps to change your situation? Because you can. We are both living proof that you can change your situation. And it didn't come because I kept acting ugly and childish and like a spoiled teenager. It was because I learned skills and because I learned how to change how I was talking to people and how I set boundaries and how I continue to love even with saying, I don't think I can continue to deal with this, but maybe we can do something different. So those are the opportunities you're going to have in this summit to join us for that. And then there's going to be tons of other things in the Facebook group and the Instagram group. We have fantastic raffle prizes going on, from books to purses to master classes to all kinds of things. So come join us and find that community. So in this emotionally sober October, you can do Julie's event, and about the time that Julie's event ends, we start on the 24th. You can get all of this for free, and we really invite you to come to the blessedfamilyrecoverysummit.com.
And they can register through that link, right? Just blessedfamilyrecoverysummit.com.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And tickets are free. And so it's 16 different topics that are going to be covered, right? So, of course, mine is about, faith and how it looks when you're the wife of an alcoholic, because that's kind of like my thing that I usually talk on. But who else is going to be there as far as like what other types of topics can they come and learn about there?
So we have so many wonderful people, and thank you for asking, Julie. So we have a mix of people, all of which who've grown up in a Christian home, talking about their addiction from their perspective. And Chad Summer, he just has an enormous story of poor decisions he's made, how the Lord has led him out, how he's made better decisions, what his choices have been, and his heart is just for serving people. And then we're also talking about the taboo subject of pornography. So we have a couple different speakers, both male and female, to talk about sex addiction, pornography, things that they have dealt with. And then we have this wonderful couple who have started a lawn care business so that they can support people who otherwise couldn't get a job, and they are helping them work through their addictions because they struggled as a couple. So they're doing their interview as a couple. And then I had a little trouble with this. If you're having trouble approaching your ministry team, approaching your pastor, talking about these things, we have a pastor who pastors pastors who's coming on to say, hey, here's some ways you may want to approach your pastor. Here's how to decide whether your pastor is safe to talk to, because honestly, some of them are not. Then we have some other folks who, one of my favorites, Craig Brown, is coming on to talk about stop hiding and start healing. His message is he was sober for over 6 years before he really began to look at how he needed to shift his life. So the overt addiction was gone, but what was still there was he wasn't healed. He didn't know who he was in Christ. He didn't know who his identity was. And then we have the Encourager podcast, and Rebecca Scott is so much fun. She has 5 systems for, managing your household, managing your life. And what she talks about is when her brother committed suicide because of addiction, these systems were already in place so she could keep herself running and have time to grieve and have time to manage the other things, the emotional pieces of her life. Plus, we have some positive intelligence coaches. We have Miss Ellie Saxer, who's talking about getting comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's the shift we're talking about. You're going to have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, doing things a little bit differently, because if we stay in the familiar, we stay stuck. So that's just a teaser on the folks that are going to be there, giving you the opportunity to make those shifts and to do them quickly.
So much goodness. And I love how there's a variety of topics. I'm interested in all of those things, but even if it's something that, there's a couple that maybe aren't for you, I promise you there's still going to be so much that is going to meet you right where you are. So I love that you have brought in a whole bunch of different people that can really speak to people in a lot of different ways, no matter where they are in this journey, which I think is awesome.
Absolutely. Julie, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. And the Emotionally Sober October, off we go. So join Julie's event and then come over and join the Blessed Family Recovery Summit. You're getting it all for free. Let's make this happen.
Yes, for sure. And y'all make sure you do go register for that summit. I can tell you from being involved behind the scenes and just seeing all of this stuff that, there's a lot of, there's some freebies. Like she said, there's some raffle prizes. There's a lot of really cool things that you're going to be able to grab with this. But also the content is really going to be life-changing. So make sure you go and register for that. BlessedFamilyRecoverySummit.com, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Perfect. Awesome. And also make sure you go register for my event that's coming up next week, How to Get Off the Addiction Roller Coaster. Again, that's at marriedtoaddiction.com/roller coaster-event. Let's make this an October to remember you deserve healing, you deserve tools, you deserve to move forward. So thank you again, Tanya, for being with me. It's been so amazing talking to you again.
Julie, it is a pleasure every time we get together.
Thank you. And thank you so much, listeners, for being here. And I will see you next time. Hey, one more quick thing before I let you go today. Do you follow Married to Addiction on either Instagram or Facebook, or both? If not, I would love to have you join me over there. It's a great place to stay connected with everything that's happening with Married to Addiction. I post updates about my podcast episodes, of course. I post about my freebies. I post about my programs. I post encouragement in the way of Bible verses and things like that. I also post just like some helpful little teaching nuggets sometimes too. So I really think that you would get a lot of value out of that as the wife of an alcoholic. And I would love to have you join me on either Facebook or Instagram, or both. You can find me at facebook.com/marriedtoaddiction or just at marriedtoaddiction on Instagram. I hope to see you there.